Everyone, actually into today's video, I've got quite a lot to get on with today, so I'm just going to very quickly rush through the announcements. There's links to articles sitting underneath web video here on my homepage at gazweathers.com. Have a browse through widget. If there's any articles that you're interested in, just click through and you'll be able to go off and read those articles when you're finished at gazweathers.com. And Gaz Shop is open, so if you've got any shopping to do at amazon.co.uk or amazon.com if you're watching this in America, or any other of your local Amazon stores wherever you're watching in the world. Just go to Gaz Shop and then from there click through the Amazon banners, which will take you to your local Amazon, and you'll have to do your Christmas shopping as normal. But at the same time, Gaz Weathers will get a royalty fee on what you buy because you click through from Gaz Weathers to Amazon. And there's green keyword ads on some of the pages, so if you right cursor over green keywords, they'll display ads. But if you click through word, go to Amazon's website, you'll be able to support gazweathers.com when you do that. All these things are essentially paying for the website, so thanks for getting involved and thanks for doing that. The links to the websites that we're using for this video are on the links page, so you'll be able to see everything in this video for yourself. Now, as I said, I've got quite a lot going on today for today's video. We're going to look at ENSO in a moment. Also got the central temperature here, and then I'll have a look at weather for the next 8 to 10 days. So we're going to have to rush through all of this so we don't go on too long. So just starting off with the Central England temperature for November, we've seen a real crash here. You remember when I did the November month ahead forecast on Monday, the Central England temperature for November was provisionally sitting at 13 degrees. Well, we've gone down now to 9.7, so we've lost a lot of degrees off the Central England temperature over the last few days. We've lost over 3 degrees, I think, in about 3 days. So that's very impressive plunge, and that doesn't take into account last night's frost. So this will probably go under 9 Celsius, I think, as we get through into tomorrow. It's going to be a pretty chilly day today, and of course it was very cold last night with the hardest frost for quite some time across many parts of the Central England zone. The temperature is still, the anomaly is still 1.4 degrees above average, so we're still above average despite losing all of that off the Central England temperature over the last 3 days. But that's a pretty impressive crash. You don't see that all that often, although it can happen. It does happen at times this time of year when we're in a rapidly cooling time. So when we've been much warmer than average, yeah, you can get big drops, and that's what we've seen over the last few days. The SOI is crashing as well. Talking about crashes, the Southern Oscillation Index came in at minus 27.17 yesterday. That's just about as negative as it can go. And of course, this is important because when the Southern Oscillation Index goes negative, it starts to help create the El Nino. Basically, it's the SOI's reflection of what the atmospheric setup is doing between Darwin and Tahiti, and when it goes negative, it's going into an El Nino sort of setup within the atmosphere. Pressures are rising across the North Australia and falling across Tahiti, and that allows, that's an El Nino type atmospheric setup, that allows the warmth through the equatorial Pacific to rise up to the surface and to really embed that El Nino in. We have had some very negative returns already over the last few weeks. Of course, the last stages of October, we saw a big drop in the SOI. 22nd of October came out at minus 25.34, for example, and the 26th came out at minus 22.95. It eased off, those drops eased off for a few days right at the very start of November, but it looks like we're crashing again, and this one could really start to upwell that water, that warm water across the equatorial part of the Pacific. So it looks like El Nino is on its way. If we get a few days of these sort of numbers coming in, that really will lock the El Nino in across the Pacific. Now, the CFS-V2 is trending more positive with the El Nino as well. This is the ensemble forecast from the CFS-V2 for Nino region 3.4, which is essentially the central part of the equatorial Pacific. The red lines here that you see there are the earliest members of the ensemble. The blue lines are the latest ones, and you can see what's happening here. We've got the black line, the thick black line there, which is sort of the ensemble mean. We can see that the earlier ensemble members were here. The latest ones are up here. So what's happening with modelling is that as the SOI is crashing, the model is beginning to increase the strength of the El Nino. It's beginning to see a stronger El Nino develop around this period, around Christmas into the start of the new year. Now, it isn't going for a strong El Nino, I have to emphasise that. It still is only going for, well, it's only really a borderline El Nino, to be honest, where the ensemble mean is. I think it'll be a little bit stronger than that, but probably getting into weak. Maybe by the end of winter could be up to moderate sort of El Nino territory, but I think that could be a struggle, actually. A weak El Nino is what I think we're looking at for this winter. Despite these very impressive, very negative southern oscillation numbers, it really is too late now to get a very strong El Nino going. If this was around March and April and we were seeing these sort of SOI numbers consistently, then yeah, it was possible we could get a very strong event. But because we're so late in the year, we're going to struggle to get this up to strong. We may get it up to moderate, but weak El Nino looks like it's going to be the call for this winter. And that's really where I've been with this for quite some time. I've been predicting we'd have a weak El Nino. I think that is still what is on course. But we'll keep an eye on these ensemble charts, because it may be with this latest crash of the El Nino, this doesn't factor that in, of course, with this latest crash of the SOI, we may see the El Nino strength being increased a little bit more. So these blue lines we have to keep an eye on. They may start to push upwards. Let's have a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts for the next week to 10 days. We've got the ECMWF over on the left. The GFS is over on the right. This will be taking us into the middle of November. Interestingly, it'll be taking us up to the 16th, so just after the middle of the month. And they're both going for this very deep trough look here across central and eastern parts of the United States. They're both seeing it, but cold air once again is digging down into central and eastern parts of the states with this ridge up here around Alaska. This is all very, very similar to what we had last winter. The ridge up here around the Pacific side of America, around Alaska, consequently the cold air being forced southwards out of Canada, setting up this very cold trough over eastern parts of the states. I think we'll be hearing reports about early snow across many northern and eastern parts of the states over the next few weeks. Now what happens is that pulls out over into the Atlantic, and then we start to push the jet stream through, and we've got a deep trough of low pressure being shown up here out in the Atlantic on both of the GFS and the ECMWF. And what's going on, of course, the difference with last year, I explained this on Tuesday, is that we've also got this very strong ridge sitting out to the east and the northeast of the country. Both the GFS and the ECMWF have that. So instead of the sort of low pressure just blasting through the country and heading off into Europe, it's stalling really, and some of the energy with the jet stream is going northwards around the ridge, some is going south to form this cut-off low down to the south of the country. What we can essentially take from that is that Eastern Europe is quite warm, Western Europe isn't as warm, but it's not cold, and particularly Western Europe is very, very unsettled with these areas of low pressure coming in. So let's have a look at the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles. And rainfall is what we're really interested in, because we've had lots of rainfall spikes being shown up here, at least to the middle of November, if not beyond that. So it looks like we're in for a wet old time event over the next week to 10 days, couple of weeks. I think you'll have plenty of rainfall coming in, so that could be quite heavy. I think particularly western areas may have to start thinking about localised flooding if all this rainfall comes off. In terms of the temperatures, we're coming out around average, a little bit below average right now. The thick red lines where we should be at this time of year, 30-year temperature average. Really we're up and down, generally a little bit above average, not excessively warm, nothing like what we had at the end of October, but generally coming out on the milder side of the average, which is about what you'd expect from the sort of synoptic patterns that we're looking at. But the real warmth is actually going to be over in the east of Europe over the next few days. The temperature anomaly from the 6th to the 14th is coming out a little bit warmer than average, so that backs up what we're looking at from the ensemble notice. The real warmth, though, is over in the east of Europe. Very high temperature anomalies over there for this time of the year. Rainfall anomaly from the 6th to the 14th is coming out wetter than average. It's hardly a surprise having seen that GFS ensemble and the height anomaly charts. Looks like we're in for quite a wet old time, but interestingly, the wettest anomalies probably probably down in the south of the country. United States temperature anomaly from the 6th to 14th is coming out colder than average in the east. That's that cold trough which will be digging the first real push of winter down into northern eastern parts of the states. Warm in the west, of course, where we've got that ridge in. So here are the generic charts. This is the GFS for Monday. Now, things are being pushed back a little bit in terms of this area of low pressure here. That was forecast to come in off the Atlantic, actually, on Monday, give quite a wet day. Now we're building a little bit of pressure up around Iceland and Greenland and just holding off that low pressure. As I've said, these charts are very interesting that we're seeing in terms of the synoptic picture, not necessarily in terms of the weather. There's no sign of anything really cold coming up, I have to emphasise that, but in terms of the synoptic, it's quite unusual to be seeing that sort of high pressure around Iceland and Greenland this time of year, trying to ward off this area of low pressure. Now, eventually this low pressure does break through as we go through to the middle of next week, but it's been pushed back by a couple of days. So we get through to Tuesday and the low pressure is beginning then to break through, but it's really on Wednesday that that low pressure properly comes through. That takes wind and rain across the country, and then we're into a very unsettled spell with this high pressure it was trying to build around Iceland and Greenland just being forced back a little bit towards the north of Scandinavia. So it turns very unsettled through the second half of next week. Deep area of low pressure at 970 millibars off the coast of Ireland. Wet and windy conditions from Wednesday onwards. We get through to day 10, which is Sunday the 16th of November, and low pressures are still dumbbelling around the country, really. The high pressure is still there up to the north and northeast, quite weakly, till we get towards Russia when it gets stronger. Notice the southerly winds coming up across the east of Europe, taking the real warmth up there. The air around these areas of low pressure is somewhat modified by the Atlantic, so the real warmth is in the east of Europe. This is nearer normal, a little bit above average because it's Atlantic air, but it's not as warm as it is with these southerly winds across the east of Europe. It's a very interesting pattern, this. It isn't all that far away from delivering some cold conditions. What we've got to do to turn it colder is take this high pressure that's across Russia and push it that way. So we would eventually set it up somewhere around there, and by doing that we would start to deliver cold air down into the east of Europe, something like that. And then we would need the jet stream to start moving south down through into Spain, Portugal, on into the Mediterranean, like that. And by doing that, we would allow this cold air digging into the east of Europe to push that way into British Isles, and we could also bring it, of course, southwards like that, where the area of high pressure is up there. So that explains what we're looking for to turn it cold. This isn't a particularly cold pattern, but just being indications with these areas of high pressure, albeit quite weakly, around this sort of area, that it's an interesting pattern that we need to keep an eye on. But so far, no sign of anything particularly cold coming up. The ECMWF, very unsettled for the middle of next week. There's that area of low pressure coming in, going to give a lot of wet and windy conditions through the second half of next week. Notice again, blocking, trying to get going over Scandinavia and to the north of Scandinavia, between Scandinavia and Greenland. The warmth again, the warm push is in the east of Europe with those southerly winds. We're cooler but not cold around these areas of low pressure, and then as we move through into day 10, this is Sunday the 16th, still the basic setup. The high pressure's up there to the northeast, the low pressure's out in the Atlantic, so still bringing bands of wet and windy conditions at times in off the Atlantic. So it looks like we're in for a really unsettled spell over the next week to 10 days. High pressure is going to try to build to the north early next week and ward off those areas of low pressure, but I think they'll break through. It's just been delayed by a day or so, but I think by the middle of next week the low pressure will be breaking through. Then we're into a proper wet and windy time event. Temperatures are going to be a little bit above average, but the real warmth is going to be in the east of Europe, and the bigger picture remains very interesting. We've got to watch out eventually whether this can evolve into a cold pattern for Europe. No sign of that yet, but it could do, so continue to watch this space. And that's it for now. Thanks for watching.